As the gunshot echoed through the sun-drenched hills of Maple Grove, I instinctively flinched, dismissing it as nothing more than an overzealous hunter. Living on the outskirts of this quaint town, accustomed to the sounds of rifle fire on a balmy Saturday, was part of life. However, when the terrified cries pierced through the serenity, I felt a chill ripple down my spine. The haunting wail belonged to my son, Ethan, and it was raw, a sound driven by unrestrained fear that ripped through the stillness of the trees. Without a moment's hesitation, I dropped the sack of feed I had intended for the barn and dashed down the cracked gravel driveway, my heart racing. The sound of my boots pounding against the ground was drowned by the urgency of my son's cries as I crested the hill leading to the pasture. What awaited me was a scene forever etched into my memory. Ethan knelt in the dirt, cradling the small figure of his beloved pony, Peanut, whose glossy chestnut coat was marred by crimson stains. Peanut had been his constant companion, the first horse he'd trained single-handedly after rescuing him from a neglectful owner. I was stunned by the sight, my breath catching in my throat. A stranger stood a short distance away, a hunting rifle released to his side, looking around as if he were the unsuspecting victim rather than the perpetrator. And there she was, Claudia Miller, standing smugly, arms crossed as if surveying her kingdom, with freshly made plans for community assessments tucked under her arm. A wave of fury ignited within me. In that moment, in the face of loss, I could have entertained wicked thoughts of revenge. They had the audacity to deem it an accident, to suggest that a small horse should never have roamed freely. The arrogance of the situation gnawed at my insides, especially when I learned it had been Claudia who had granted permission for the hunt. To what end? To assert a false sense of order. The sheriff's arrival would soon change the narrative, but for now, all I could focus on was the child embracing his dying friend. The day had started with promise, the sun filtering gently through the trees, infusing the landscape with that warm golden glow that signaled a day full of potential. Earlier that morning, Ethan had been bursting with joy. He was outside in the pasture, delighting in Peanut's tricks as he prepared for the annual regional youth championship. Their performance would be their chance for sponsorship, an opportunity to shine in the world of young equestrians. After everything he had faced, the connection built with Peanut symbolized a renewed sense of hope. I could hardly compute the contrast of this moment, the beauty of carefree laughter transformed into unrelenting grief. I stood by the barn, holding a few tools as Claudia's voice carried over, strident and unwelcome. "Just doing a safety check," she declared, though her brand of safety felt more like harassment wrapped in a white glove inspection. There was no sense of balance when it came to her demeanor. She hovered near every inch of property, as if scrutinizing every detail as a meticulous warden. Did she believe she had that authority? I scrutinized her from afar, fighting the urge to dismiss her as I heard the sound of Peanut's hooves dancing happily on the ground. A couple of hours later, Ethan and I bounded back from a trip for supplies, the anticipation of the show buzzing between us. I parked the truck, and my heart sank upon spotting the decorated vehicles of hunters lining the pasture. Their muck-covered trucks, adorned with camouflage and weapons, were an unsettling sight. Ethan was out of the door in a flash before I even had the chance to grab him. I followed after blindly. The horrifying spectacle became clearer as I approached. Peanut lay unmoving, blood staining the ground beneath him, and laughter from the hunters mingled with Ethan's horrified sobs, driving a knife into me. Claudia, now behind the chaos, managed to orchestrate this tragedy under the banner of community safety, her desperate bid for some semblance of control. The sheriff, Sheriff Tom, arrived, witnessing the mess of a situation unfold, while I confronted Claudia, who with her clipboard seemed proud of her so-called moment of authority. "I sanctioned a limited hunt," she chirped, utterly insensible to the chaos left in her wake. "It was a necessary measure for community safety. Wild boars are a serious threat." I was left stammering, words stuck in my throat, unable to retrieve the anger I knew I should be feeling. "You authorized?" I gasped out. "Without consulting anyone? Without our consent?" He handed her an official notice. "This is part of an ongoing investigation," the sheriff replied, his voice low and serious. "You'll need to clarify how you justified this." Claudia's expression faltered as a wave of realization washed over her. The silence after Ethan's screeched cries of despair was deafening. Soon, tears streamed down Ethan's cheeks as his tiny hands held Peanut as if he could wish the horse back to life. In that moment of agony, renewed resolve coursed through me. Claudia would not escape. I watched her mouth words that could only be lies, shifting blame and deflecting responsibility. I would not let her wriggle out of this one. The days following needled on as the investigation revealed layers of negligence on Claudia's part, her attempts to bend the rules pulling her deeper into a pit. It turned out that the hunters Claudia had shepherded onto our land had tarnished records, with prior violations lurking in their backgrounds. Each detail revealed was like peeling back paper from a wound that refused to heal. At an HOA meeting convened to address this crisis, Claudia, emboldened by her delusion of authority, attempted to cast herself as the victim. She stood at the head of the room, theatrically waving papers that outlined her completely unfounded claims that we had leveraged the pastoral grounds, that our pets represented aggressive threats to the community. I silently watched as the audience took in her outlandish remarks, jaws slackened in disbelief. The whispering grew louder as her grip on the narrative unraveled. The board president, an affable man named Albert, pressed for calm as he introduced fellow neighbors sharing their concerns. Left and right, familiar faces offered their accounts of Claudia's ongoing harassment, her enforced punishments that were more whimsical than legitimate. Then Ethan, emboldened, decided to raise his voice. A tiny figure, yet standing firm, he took his place before the audience. With Peanut's ribbon nestled in his pocket, Ethan shared tales of their journey together, how they had rescued one another, how dreams of championships were extinguished. A heavy silence settled, a layer of grief thickening the air as his voice resonated, raw yet firm, recounting moments that defined their bond. Claudia's facade cracked, giving way to frantic denial as her false alliances began to slip. Despite her desperate shouts of innocence, claims of community safety rang hollow in the air. Community members began to peel back her narrative, revealing the cold, unyielding truth. As she floundered for footing, Albert swiftly motioned to address her actions in the context of community jurisdiction. He expertly laid out the bylaws, one by one, dismantling Claudia's every half-hearted argument. The room's tension reached a peak when a retired judge named Lorraine firmly called for a vote to expel Claudia from her HOA role. When the gavel struck, her downfall was as swift as it was satisfying. No sooner did she stumble from the meeting room than excited groups gathered around Ethan and me. As neighbors approached with encouraging words, I realized something profound had shifted. We spent the days following within our community, granting ourselves space to heal while alongside others who rallied to support us. Inspired by the shared grief for Peanut, plans for an equestrian program emerged. an outlet directed toward caring for animals, empowering youth to nurture a connection to horses. Ethan was thriving, planting roots of resilience where a beloved friend had once lain, grasping hold of hope. We had decided to plant a tree in Peanut's memory, each shovelful of dirt a token of love and shared grief. One evening, while tending to the soil, a quiet tranquility blanketed the ranch. We decorated the base with stones gathered from the fields, while our neighbors offered personal touches. A small wooden sign reading Peanut's Rest found its place nearby. With each passing day, the oak tree grew stronger, its roots intertwining into the earth that once bore more than just a simple pasture. It became a branch point of community healing, a point of pride expressing who we were. And as seasons changed, a gentle reminder drifted through the winds, a soft whisper lingering in the air, a fleet note easily dismissed but familiar, like the resonance of a tiny bell long forgotten. Together, we helped heal what had been broken. Where Claudia Miller had once cast shadows, bonds grew tangible, renewed under the sunlight of a shared dream. Not just a story forged in loss, the greater narrative remained alive, a testament to steadfastness, resilience, and the undying spirit that binds communities together. The journey was far from over, but together we lifted each other up. And on that day, beneath the star-studded sky, it was clear. This is where we began anew.